Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah, I have-
my arm's long enough.
I have
I
some
got one
too.
around wall if you need.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That is a little. Oh my gosh.
That's the trees.
Well, I have 8:30.
Got high heels on or something.
Pretty close.
A
Oh.
lot of high heels.
Sean's high heels.
John, I thought you sounded like you're walking down the hall in high heels.
Sound like I.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the May 21st, 2025 Park and Tree Committee meeting of Sweet Home, Oregon. At this time, may we rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Can we do a roll call at this time?
Yes. Right. Scott Swanson,
Here.
Matthew Bechtel,
Present.
Lena Tucker. Present. Wally Shreves,
Here.
Bob Dalton,
Present.
Nancy Patton. Here. We have a quorum. Deborah is supposed to be here, but a little tardy.
Yep.
From what I gather.
Yep. Okay. Meeting rules of order. A few things that we talked about since our last meeting. One thing I'm probably mostly the victim of is let's try to keep our meeting in order and not with a bunch of humorous jokes that some people may not appreciate. I know I'm the one who does that, and I probably still will from time to time accidentally, but it may happen. So, also another thing, and this was something I hadn't thought of, but going through the guidelines, let's try to watch using brands that we talk about or using something, because this is a government system and there's a process to how things are done. So when we say, oh, I'll just run to Costco and get that, that may not be the appropriate path. So let's just pay attention to that. And it's also good just to think local. I know I got to go buy a bunch of stuff right after this, all local. So, okay. Time reports. Does anyone have anything?
Wally,
Oh,
can we go back a little bit?
Oh, just a minute. You go ahead.
So, and it's not, I mean, please
Yeah.
still have a sense of humor. It's not
Oh,
about
yeah.
that. And it's not we just have to make sure, because the way we procure what we buy has
Yeah.
to go through a process. So we just have to be careful.
Yep.
And the biggest thing is just following the agenda, because it's
Yep.
really hard when we bounce around all over the place. We may not have someone online right now, but there are people that log in later and watch this. And even for us who have to go back and do minutes, sometimes it gets a little confusing going back and forth all the time. So we just need to be more cognizant of following the agenda and following the procedures for doing that. And then also under this is your powers and duties. So chapter 2.10 under city committees, it lists your powers and duties. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because I did put in the tree list. But we need to make sure, you know, all the events and being involved in the events is actually a great thing that you guys are involved in, but these are your actual duties.
Mhm.
So the events are just above and beyond what you do, which I think is great. And you guys are a very active group and I want to encourage you, but we also have to remember to go back to this list and make sure that the committee is following what this list says. And if there's something that you don't agree with this list, it would have to go to charter, which right now charter committee is being evaluated. So if you want any changes to this, you know, now would be the time to start talking about it. However, for the time being, this is your list of things. So we just need to make sure to circle back to that every once in a while.
Sure.
So that's all I have for that.
All right. With that said, let's move on to the Weddle Bridge update. I'm joking. It's the last thing on the list. Said I wouldn't do that again.
All right.
Can't help it. Time reports. I think we got all the time reports in from Arbor Day because we got a hard copy of that. So if anybody has anything since then, please email that to Angela. Thank you. Let's take a look at the meeting minutes. Validate them. I'll need a motion to approve and a second.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting minutes are approved. At this time, do we have any public comments? Be out there? Huh. Amazing. Nobody else is online. Okay, let's move on to old business. Do we have an update from the beautification committee?
Am I on now? Okay.
You are.
Well, we planted flowers on May 12th, the flowers arrived. May 13th, we planted the median, pretty much from 8:30 to 10:30. And then on the 14th, we did the entryways. We got all our flowers from Bauman's Farms, 1,200 petunia plants, plus we had to get 85 more, 30 10-gallon baskets and 4 small baskets, 2 of which are right outside this door. I was especially pleased that we had 20 volunteers on Tuesday when we did the median. 4 were park and tree people. We had 7 new that day and 2 new the next day. So that's a total of 9 new people that joined us. Do you want to know like how much we spent? Or can I just turn that in later? Okay. It was around $6,000.
Okay.
So it wasn't too bad. And I think that pretty much, unless you have any questions. We also got a little bit of, we had an article put in the New Era from Elizabeth Curtis about native plants. And then we also had a picture that Nancy Patton sent in to the New Era about the winner of our basket at Arbor Day. So that was nice. And we also got our brochures out there. We've got some here at City Hall, and then we have some at Chamber of Commerce too. So I was glad to get those brochures done in time. Any other questions?
I'd just like to say, after working with you guys on the planting in the median between the work Public Works does and your organization, that went extremely well, I thought. Very smooth and effective, and it looks great again.
Thank you.
And Candy, I just wanted to make a comment about the gentleman that went by and yelled things at us. I went and talked to him and I actually it smoothed him out. I said he needs to come to the meetings, hear that there is a budget. He's basically was yelling, "You're wasting city money," and da da da. And so, obviously he didn't know the process like, any committee. So I think that was really helpful to him. He actually apologized at the end, but
When is your next event, Candy?
We are just doing weeding from now on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. So,
Next Tuesday?
yeah, the
Mm.
27th. And then, of course, we have our meetings here at City Hall on the second Thursday at 10 o'clock.
I think you gave a list out to everybody.
Yeah.
We have one.
Candy, thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. Arbor Day wrap up. To me, it seemed like it went extremely well again this year. Kids had a ball, food disappeared.
Yeah.
Definitely thank you to Public Works for helping out, getting stuff out there and picking up the debris we ripped off trees. Yeah, the
Ivy.
ivy,
Ivy.
English ivy. Anybody else?
So I was going to tell you all, if you didn't know, at the Pacific Power, sorry, I may or may not have a voice that lasts. They gave us 4 certificates, $500 a piece to purchase trees and plants moving forward. We've talked internally, we don't know how we're going to do it yet, but we'll use a few of those for our tree purchases. But we're thinking about doing a couple more, some sort of raffle or some sort of prize or something. We haven't gotten to the point of thinking about how we're going to go through that, but to offer that also to someone in the committee. And they had such a good experience at Arbor Day that they're actually coming back for Harvest Festival, and they've actually donated toward Harvest Festival. So been talking to them this week. So it looks like they're going to stay participating in community events, which is great. Great group of people to work with, and they seem to be really wanting to be a part of the community.
Good.
So
Lena-
thank you, Wally, for getting a hold of them and
Is
having
that the same gift certificates he gave you?
Yeah,
That's what she's talking about.
So only thing I want to say about Arbor Day is that make sure that we send thank you letters or cards to the people of Pacific Power and the Jamboree for loaning us their Tic Tac thing. When people can contribute and we use their stuff, I think it's important that they get thanked.
Maybe that's something we should do as a committee because we're the ones that went.
Right. If we're allowed to.
We are.
Okay.
thank yous have gone out for us, email thank yous, nice email thank yous, but not cards. So
Yeah.
I've sent out all the emails of all the participants. So
I can still send a card to someone. Slightly authorized.
People like cards. Thank you
Yeah.
cards.
Yep. I'll make a note of that.
Deb is having a challenge getting online. She sent a text. Can someone please help with this? Not sure how to help her.
We are broadcasting and everything is good. She just needs to go onto our website
Okay.
and click the meetings link
it out.
and
to
join.
go to the watch live and click on there.
Okay.
If she doesn't have a Microsoft Teams account, that could be a challenge.
No, she's been on
Done it
before.
before.
Let me, if you can tell her, I'll send her the link and have her
Okay.
click on the link.
Okay.
Tell her to check her email real quick.
Do you remember how many hot dogs we gave out?
Yeah.
144.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah. There's about 12 dozen.
I think there was maybe half a dozen left.
At most.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that is a big draw and it's an economical thing to do. I mean, I don't know what it was. It's just a little over $100 for hot dogs and buns. It's a pretty, it makes it a big draw for people to come to something.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I wouldn't go somewhere for a hot dog personally. But
Some of them had 2 hot dogs. They drank a lot of lemonade.
Yeah,
So Wally, next year, can we make a list though? Cause like we ran out of things.
yeah.
Okay, Easy
For next
peasy.
year, actually, we'll have a sub meeting in advance of it and go over everything that we need to do again.
okay.
This is year 3, I think, of doing it more formal with a lot of extra stuff and the games and the kid to park. And I think that really draws it all together. So,
Yeah, they had fun.
yeah. Scott, you have any thoughts? How was the track?
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't there,
No problem.
but the track meet was consuming.
Yes.
We could hear them.
Yeah. And we saw people after the events were ending over there showing up over at the park.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's good.
yep. Yeah. Just random. There was a couple people.
Yeah, I didn't get out there till like 4:30, I think, or
Yeah.
5. So
Yep. Okay. Public
I've-
Works, did you have anything, thoughts on it? After the fact, like something we should have done or something we shouldn't have done? No?
No.
Okay.
I think
I think
the
it's perfect.
informational booths were good. We had ours, we had beautification. We had the lady with the pollinator, bee information, and Pacific Power. So I think, a few different informational booths are good, but let's not do the Harvest Fair realm for that. Let's just kind of keep it small and pertinent to what we're doing.
And I liked it how that gentleman came and brought plants. That was really cool and saved the tree.
Yes,
Did we get him a card?
I have his phone number.
Okay.
I've forgotten his name, unfortunately, but I thanked him profusely. He donated a really nice Oregon white live oak that he'd grown, and we're going to use that in one of the parks, perhaps north side if the elms aren't looking too great by the end of the summer. Yeah. So we have a nice native oak tree for a replacement tree somewhere. So, and he said he'd be happy to bring us more plants. And I'll remember his name at some point, but right now I can't remember it.
Lena, will you send me his contact information
I will.
also?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just because I didn't know and still don't remember, who were the kids in the tiaras and
Junior court
junior court?
through Carla.
I thought that was really neat that they were there. It was neater when I knew who that was. Who I was introducing.
I knew who they were because
Yeah.
Tyson did it when he was in
Yeah.
first
I
grade.
don't think that was actually planned. I think that was just a spontaneous, they were there at the same time we were kind of thing. So
Oh,
it worked out-
really?
It worked out well.
Yeah, maybe that's something we should look at though going forward. One other thing that I got for a tip for next year was to ask the Logger Olympic people to possibly come and do a demonstration
Good.
at the event. It's removal of trees is part of planting trees. So having them come and show kind of what they do. So during the Logger Olympics that happen here in Sweet Home, I'm not going to remember the guy's name right now. It'll come to me as I'm driving away, but I know who to talk to and I'll visit with him and see if we can put something like that together for next year.
Would that be,
Unless
would that
somebody
be Milt?
thinks there's something crazy.
Would that be Milt Moran?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, another option might be getting the high school forestry club over there if Milt can't produce anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, the forestry club does a lot of that stuff.
And
Their competitions and whatnot, they do
Yeah.
a lot of that.
Okay.
they would probably be interested in doing that actually, I would
Sure.
think.
Okay.
And they
I'll-
do the same things.
Yeah, I know the teacher, so I can stop and talk to him. Okay, any other Arbor Day thoughts? Nope. All right, let's move on. Sankey Park Phase 3 update.
So we are still, we're not in a pause pattern right now. We are in a try to figure this out in a different way pattern. We don't want to lose our grant funding. So we are working with Lon Tyler, who is part of the Timber Framers Guild. And we're trying to come up with a plan to figure out how to do the path and still the bandstand still. So because they're lumped together, they have a great program. It's a community build program where they come in and they use the community to erect this. However, because it's packaged all in one grant, we have to put it out to bid as one, and that's what we're trying to get past that hurdle, is how to award them that portion of it while we have to do the trail. So we're working through the government rules of how to do that, and I sent Lon all of the engineering information on the trail so they could take a look. The other guy's name is Steven. I've never met him, but he's the one that puts the projects together. And so they're going to meet with us here soon so we can try to talk through the procurement procedures and how we could possibly do that to where we can bid it all together, but then somehow have the contractor separate. So we're working out the legal details of that. So we're crossing our fingers that still works. So,
Yeah.
and we're really hoping so. Because it's a great program. Their community build right now, they're building something in Brownsville. He took pictures and sent them to me. There's a park in Boise, which I've been to 1,000 times, that they built a structure in there, and they're all beautiful. And the way they do it is they get the community together to help. Not necessarily, they have to do the professional part. And Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, because Sean met with me. But they kind of do the professional part of it, and then we bring in volunteers, and we can use like local timber people. The other thing what they do, which I find the only thing I can really to help people to describe it to people is kind of like the Amish barn raising, except for we don't have all of the community can't be the ones because it has to be engineering type stuff. But they actually stay on site. We feed them on site, and they do it all like within a week. So it's a really quick process. So it's a kind of a cool process, and I'm kind of excited and hope that we get to do it. It's just working out all the details. So I just wanted you to know that we're not stopping this path. We're trying to figure out how to keep it all together. Expenses are still way above our heads, so that's the other portion of it, just still trying to figure out how to work that out. So, but we're working hard to try to get this whole package still to work. So I just don't have any real updates for you yet. We're just working on it.
Well, it's good news though, that there's a possible path forward.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, just to confirm, I know it says Sankey Park, but the next thing's Bridge, so I'm gonna tie them together.
And I have something to tell you guys about that.
We have three covered bridges in town. Am I correct? The one at the front of town, this one here, and the Weddle Bridge.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
talking about the little ones too.
Yeah, that's it though, right? Okay. It's for future.
I had to think. I was like, which ones are you?
I thought about it
Little
on the
ones.
way here. I just went on it. I wanted to cover it. So let's move on to Weddle Bridge. I have one thing to state. So I've talked to the person at Mill City who did most of the fundraising, Linda something. And what I was waiting on is for Lena and I and so after the meeting, we're going to call her and coordinate a time next week to go visit and see how they did their fundraising, which may help with fundraising for part 3 in Sankey Park. We may learn some things that we didn't know. So we're going to try to steal somebody else's knowledge of how they did their fundraising, because they got a mass amount of money, and Mill City doesn't look that big to me compared to Sweet Home. So
If you wouldn't mind sending me her contract, we're trying to find out who the engineer was.
okay,
We're having a hard time getting a bridge engineer because our bridge is not on, it's not on a road. We
Yeah.
doesn't use it. So like ODOT can't be, so we have to find an engineer, and we're having a hard time finding qualified engineers. So if they have one,
Yeah.
if you could get that contact for me. And then I want to read something. Cecily sent me this. So she's actually been working on some stuff for Weddle Bridge, and I'm just going to read you her email. It says in March, staff submitted a historic resource request to the state's Historic Preservation Office to inquire about potentially relisting Weddle Bridge as a historic resource. They were notified early May that the bridge may be eligible, and staff met with the state office last week to discuss next steps. The city will need to complete an extensive application describing the history and context of the bridge, and it may take up to a year to receive final determination on the bridge historic status, including the time to develop the application. Applications are only accepted 3 times a year, with the next 2 deadlines on July 1st and November 1st. The state office provided examples of previous successful applications that can be used as a model as we work on the application, and indicated that they are very optimistic we will be successful in relisting Weddle Bridge on the National Register for Historic Places. So part of what this means, it's a twofold thing. there are grants available for historic,
Mhm.
but it also restricts. I don't think that's going to be an issue in this because we don't want to change the character of the bridge. So I think, but it's also the way that we repair it. It's a little bit more restrictive. However, it may open us up to a different resource for funding. So Cecily's been working on this. So hopefully we might have another path for funding in that area also. So, and also the city council, when they went through the budget, has increased the budget for us for Weddle Bridge for next year.
Oh,
So
good.
they actually put funds in there toward the bridge for at least we can start repairing some stuff. But again, the first thing we have to do is get an engineer to determine loads on it. And that's the first thing that has to be done. And we're having an issue getting an engineer that is qualified to do that. So that's our first step.
So just to add to that, my downtime of rest, I've been digging in to the history of that bridge. And the engineering firm that I found is in Eugene that oversaw that bridge when it come back together.
Mm.
So I have that engineering firm that did that, and I can pass that on to you. But I also found the engineer that was primary over this one. He just retired last year. I've got his name.
So he might know.
Yeah, I've been digging, and it really I learned about the history of it's a how construction and how it was put together, but they had oversaw the whole process of that. And I thought that's a pretty good resource to tap on them and see if they can't give us some insight or direct us. And then the Oregon Bridge Preservation Group is another big one I saw that is involved with historical bridges. That might be another source. I dug that out too. So I'll pass that along to you, but
Yeah,
I've been
that'd be great,
digging in
'cause-
my spare time to try to find the resources that could maybe direct us or oversee it, or maybe the retired guy could come volunteer, you know.
No, that would be great. And even if the one has retired, he might have resources that he
But
can.
yeah,
use.
there was only one engineering firm that's really saw the bridges in Oregon. They're really well known. There was a lot of history with those guys, so.
Yeah, and because ours has been taken off of the road and no longer
Yep.
used for transportation,
Yep.
it puts it in a different
But
category.
I'll pass that on to you.
Yeah, that would be great, because that's what we're really trying to get an engineer so we can start getting at least
Yeah.
that part moving. Because we need to know the steps so we don't have to redo things. So,
Yeah.
no, that would be great. Thank you,
Yeah,
Bob.
I'll get it to you.
Anything crazy going on with the bridge lately? Yeah.
Greg's going, yes.
What say you? Somebody.
Just an uptick in graffiti,
Oh,
vandalism, trash. Pretty consistent.
probably because of summer, warmer weather, kids getting out and about.
Maybe.
Yeah, I was down there last week. I did a walk through the park, and before I even got to the park, I could hear this loud music, and I knew it was coming from the park. So I walked in, my son and I walked in there, and there was an individual sitting up on the ledge with a boombox plugged into his iPhone. Not the most appropriate music to be heard coming up from that bridge. And there was a family with little kids there, and I thought, you know, how do we address just that? It's not that you don't want someone to play music, but that particular and how loud it would drive people away from accessing the bridge. You know, and they were sitting up there, you know, I'm thinking, how do you prevent them from just sitting up there, you know, to get them down off there in their dirty feet on the side of the bridge and everything. Yeah, I didn't go that far.
Well, you can tell them they have to have a PA permit from the police department if they're going to play their music loud enough for people to hear it. So,
Because I wondered, well, if we posted it, then I'd probably tag the doggone sign. So I thought you'd have to put the sign up high enough that they can't reach it, but they have climbers, so it's a challenge.
What was my son's response?
oh,
There has, where's the
Right.
feedback? We had discussion about closing the bridge with the school district and also PD. First thought was that we don't want to close it because that impacts everybody. But this is kind of continued. We are working with PD. We get videos when this stuff happens and we turn it right over to the authorities and they do their thing. And they have caught a couple of couple of younger kids that have caused some of this. We need to kind of get it to stop at some point. And so we hope that maybe a little bit more vigilance, even by, our own people or in Public Works or by PD or even the public would probably help and go a long way. but there is kind of an uptick, and it could be because it's summer or it's getting there. The end of school is also part of that. And it seems not just to be high school kids, it could be junior high kids. And so we kind of been dealing with that. A couple broken boards, we've got some black paint, and so we've had to do some painting and graffiti and things like that. And so maybe just getting the word out that there are videos up there and that we see what occurs. And if they're figured out who it is, they will find you. So it's happening.
That's good to hear some people are getting caught. Okay, well, and we'll follow up with the folks in Mill City and see who the engineer, see if they give me an engineer name and.
Yeah, it'd be good to have a couple people list
Yeah.
and then we can reach out and kind of see, because that's another thing that after looking at the engineering costs for just the trail, we want to make sure that we have it in the budget for the engineers. So just getting a couple on board to at least have a conversation with would be great.
Right.
So thank you both.
All right, moving on to new business. Oh,
Deb says she's online now.
all right. Yay. Okay, let's start over. No. Moving on, cut the gut. We've determined through a group of us that we are not going as a park and tree committee, not going to participate as a park and tree committee and cut the gut. The turnaround area in Sankey Park does not work for it. And the other part, I mean, this is the part that got me, is I don't see it tying to parks or trees. Unless somebody hits a tree with their car doing a burnout, I don't see how this lines up for us. It's not the focal point. I am an automotive person, and parks and trees are not the reason I'm interested in parks and trees are kids and how the kids interact with that. And that was mostly when I started, that was the purpose for getting on here, was for the parks. And I've learned to love the trees and understand the importance of the trees while being on the committee, which I didn't know. But I personally don't believe that cut the gut ties to it. And I think it's a great time for us to get out and participate in an event like that. Because I think several of us have something that we can do as part of it, or link up with another group that is participating in it, similar to what we did last year. You know, if you're interested in doing that on your own. But we as a committee also have other events going on that's upcoming that we're going to need to focus on. So, and they're not on here, and I'll cover them when we get to roundtable. I'm staying on track.
Okay, I disagree. Just because last year, even though we were on that part over there, we gave out so many brochures for parks. People were shocked at the number of parks we had in our community. And just that in itself, I mean, they could come by City Hall and get a brochure or chamber or whatever, but that to me was amazing. I think it was well worth it for us to be out here. I mean, my husband drives the Mustang. Yeah, we participate as a family every year and cut the gut. But I'm actually disappointed that you guys voted not to do this.
We didn't vote yet. We're going to do that today.
Oh, well, you said we weren't doing it.
Well, there's also been the determination we're not doing it at Sankey Park
Okay.
already.
Well, I
And I
understand
think
that.
if it's nothing more than we need to find a way to get the brochures out during that event, we could probably do that.
And there's already someone that has booked City Hall to do their stop
Oh.
here. So this is already taken up by.
So how come we weren't asked first to do
They-
that part over there?
They turned in their application.
A long time ago.
So out front here, is this little
Brown.
bridge, is it a stop point?
I don't know what they're gonna do. They haven't told us exactly how they're gonna do it.
What I was just throwing out the idea, if this was a pull through, come in this entrance and go by and get their picture with and then park a tree there.
There's going to be
Yeah.
two separate groups that are coming together that have asked for this spot.
Okay.
And they came in months and months and months ago.
Okay, so when were we told about having an application and to be part of this?
They approached us
Who?
almost immediate,
Who's they?
the two people that will be here.
Okay.
They
I mean-
approached us immediately after last year's event.
I mean, last year when we did this, when we came back with the recap, we were real positive about it. I think the only thing we wish we would have done was went to Sankey Park, but I understand if there's not a turnaround, but I'm disappointed.
So this isn't a city event. This is a chamber event. So you'd
Yeah.
have had to turn your application in with the chamber.
I know,
not
but
with
as
us.
a Parks Board, we're part of the city to do
Agreed,
this.
but this isn't a city event. This is a chamber event. They registered with the chamber to be a checkpoint.
Yes, they do have to get approval to use our facility, but it's not a city. We don't have anything to do with the actual event itself.
So with all that said, I think it'd be much easier if we just take a vote. So,
Yeah, but where are we gonna go?
well, we'll vote if we want to participate in it or not,
Okay.
you know?
So
So-
like Wally said, sorry, Wally, didn't mean to, even if the Park and Tree Committee doesn't do their own, you can still participate with other people and jump in on other people.
Volunteer
So
with
it,
other groups.
yeah, and volunteer with other groups. So it's not that you can't be involved, just
Yeah.
as a group and your own spot is what you're looking at. So
Yep. So all those in favor of participating as formally as the Park and Tree Committee in the Cut the Gut, say aye.
I,
All
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Oh, that was Deb. Okay. That voice came from nowhere. Hi, Deb. Scared me.
Aye.
here.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
I think we have more opposed than we have.
let's do this by roll call vote.
Okay,
Because there was just, I don't know, it sounds like there's more than one person online, but okay, so roll call vote for no. So let's go I'll just go roll call and you say yes or no. How's that sound?
perfect.
Do it that way. Okay, so Scott Swanson,
No.
hey, Matthew,
No.
Lena,
No.
Wally,
No,
Bob,
No,
Nancy,
Yes.
and Deborah.
Yes.
Okay. So it is 5 noes, 2 yeses, so it is voted down.
So with that being said, next year, I want us to have this put on our agenda long before people come to you and say they want that spot.
Okay,
If it
so
has to go through the chamber, we can do that.
here's the other thing, though, that comes with this. This is not a city event, and the city doesn't have a budget to support a station. So that's the other part of it, is it requires baskets, it requires swag, and that's the other part that the city doesn't have the budget for, is that part of it. So it's not just about having the booth, it's about the fact that we have to be able to put it in our budget, and I don't know if that's, I mean, we can ask, but that's the other part of it. There is an expense to it.
I also volunteered to make the basket at no cost.
And I appreciate that. I'm just letting you know. I'm just passing on the information. So that's just the other side of it.
I
So
remember last
So-
year when we looked at doing the chamois, all of a sudden, when we looked at the price of it, was like, oh, that was ridiculous compared to what it was a few years earlier. And I can't imagine with the inflation that anything has went down. Although it's all coming down in the next few months, I've been told. On the-
So here's a question. Can Nancy pass out brochures if she associates herself with another group?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a problem with that?
No.
If she sets up a little table, they don't have a problem with her setting up a table and passing out, representing the committee.
Yeah, in fact, we can, as a committee, we could participate with another group, just, with some other people passing them out as well.
and I did write down, I need to check to see that I need to look to see if I need to print more. So I'll go do that. I'll go
Yeah.
back to my desk and see how many we went through.
Yeah, I'm just talking about us doing our own formal site.
Yeah.
That was our vote. So how we can support or do, brochure pass outs with another group, wherever it be at, we could do that still.
I'm sorry, last thing I'll say, I think it's very sad. I mean, so I'm going to wear my jacket and go sit with whoever, the hot rod group, and pass out flyers for the brochures for the Parks Board, for the parks.
Well, it would be ideal to have it in a park, but the fact is that's difficult. you know, especially since this one here is already spoken for and Sankey isn't. We'll have to turn around and North Side's even worse.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's important here is knowing the process ahead of time so we know what we need to do. Because, getting a permit and through the chamber and that, I'm unaware that that's the process. So I think that's
See,
part of our education learning here is to understand the
been
process
notified.
and what do we need to do to participate. So if we knew that up ahead of time, we'd be better prepared for that.
Maybe Nancy, you could take that as an action item to visit with Legia, sometime between now and our next meeting to figure out if we want to do that for next year, like to know the process from.
Well, we got a notice because we always take our car. My husband drives the car, but and I don't have my store anymore. So I got a notice a long time ago for when I had my store. But as far as us,
Mhm.
I had no idea. I don't recall that we had to apply for it last year, but maybe we did.
We didn't because we were tied in with the police and I know these aren't the right names, but there's a police dude
Mopar Club.
and somebody from the community center, and I met with them and talked to them.
Yeah, Toxic Mopar
Yeah.
covered basically your cost last year. But
Yeah.
if you're going to have your own checkpoint, there are requirements that the chamber has to have that checkpoint. And it's a monetary value that the city doesn't have in the budget.
Right.
To
I
cover.
did that with my store.
So, and the reason you don't remember applying for it is because I did it, or because Bob Burford also, it was supposed to be a combined thing, so I did it for everybody.
Yeah.
And then we found out they can do it at the park, and so we withdrew that. So I'm the one that ended up doing it because it just defaulted
Yeah.
to me somehow. So, but yes, and if you watch the chamber, website, it says on there when they open up registrations and you have to register as a point. So I know just as soon as all you know. So because it's not our event, we don't have much to do with it. So
anyways, is that something you would be willing to take on to go find that information out and
Yeah, I
bring
will.
it to the next month's meeting? So at least we know.
So I
Because
could,
I didn't realize it was Legia
right.
that area does all that.
Like I said, when I had my store, I did it every year and I knew the process for having a store, but as a committee, I didn't know what we were supposed to do. I'm sorry, guys, my rant's over. I just had a lot of fun doing it last year, so.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being or not emotional, but invested and want something. So
I'll
I've
look
had that
into it.
happen several times, especially at home. My wife says no. So let's move on to the street tree list.
So I sent you, and this came up mostly because I was looking at the powers and duties, but aside from that, I had a landscape architect call. It's been in probably the last month because we have a subdivision going in and they wanted a tree list so they would know what to plant where. All I had was the one that we have, and I thought, well, we probably should update it, and because we've been talking about taking some trees off that list and maybe making sure I don't know, somehow differentiating, because sometimes they want to do street trees like within the little planter strips. So we might want to differentiate, and I don't know. I'm leaving it up to your expertise of how to divide it, but because we don't want some of the stuff in the planter strips to go into because they grow too big. And so maybe differentiating. So I gave her the list that we had and told her to just keep in mind what she's planting. And she seemed very knowledgeable because, we were talking about planter strips, and she says, yeah, she knows a couple dwarf, and she had all the right, she sounded like Lena when Lena talks about trees.
Okay.
So she seemed to know what she was looking at and looking for. And so I think she'll take that list and use it,
How much of this do we have in the electronic version? No,
Is it- I haven't
this
looked at
is the one we've been doing. You and I. I know I did.
Oh,
a
the
bunch of tree
inventory? Oh, yeah.
Inventory.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I did a bunch of street trees on that.
Yeah, and everything that we inventoried is in these lists in one shape or the other.
Right.
The one that Alice Smith and I worked on this, and it would have been that 2015 version that I found, which we kind of morphed into this categorized. And so I'm happy to go through it again and update it based on some of the new trees,
Yeah.
varieties, cultivars that we've planted, things that we've learned, resources that I've picked up along the way from either Pacific Power or other cities. So,
That'd be great.
but I like the idea of actually thinking in terms of planting strips or beauty strips and appropriate size trees for those. I think I've found some resources on that. So,
That's the area we seem to have
Yeah.
the most issues, and then the most people asking us what they should and shouldn't plant there, and
Yeah.
the most issues with Pacific Power also,
Yep.
because those are usually right in the same line as the power
Yep.
lines. And so when she asked me that, that's what made me think about this. It's like,
Yep.
not that I want to add any more work, but if there's a way to separate those out. And I also I kind of forgot about the tree inventory you guys were doing. Have we uploaded that anywhere? It's been so long since I've actually talked about
in the
it.
cloud.
yeah,
Okay.
it's all there in the inventory.
Okay.
I can print out kind of specific reports.
Am I
It's-
added to that to be able to look at it? I
You
can't
should
remember.
be,
I
yeah.
think you were the first one
I'll
on
have to
it.
go-
You had
Yeah.
authorized me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
You
at
should
the
have-
Went downhill.
It's been so long since I've
Yeah.
said it, I don't even remember. So I'll go look and see if I can
Yeah.
find it.
The best way I've found, I guess, to utilize it is when you look at what Wally and I did is you see I just use the map version and I can see the clumps around the parks.
Mhm.
So, and we're all good because I finished Clover, but I need to go back to Sankey and do some of the exterior
Okay.
cleanup, and I need to go back to North Side for some of the trees that we said we needed to remove kind of along the river there. So it's an ongoing process, but
Okay.
right now all of our parks and all of Long Street are in it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think I've got a couple to finish in Strawberry.
Okay.
And then, I don't know why I can't remember the name of it, the little thing at the front of town on the west side.
Clover.
Clover,
Clover.
I did that.
You did that?
Clover's good.
Oh, I can quit looking
You,
at it.
you
every
don't have
day.
to worry about
I
Clover.
gotta get to that.
And Ashbrook is done.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, and now kind of becomes more of a maintenance, like any new trees we plant or trees, deceased trees we take out. So I've been going back through and updating that. So,
Okay.
but I'm happy to work on getting this cleaned up again since, yeah, it's been a while and we've learned a few things since 2015, 2016. So,
No, that would be great because we have
Yeah.
a couple subdivisions that are going in and we want to make sure that we
Okay.
guide them properly. We don't want them, having them to rip things out. So I think that would be handy. So thank you very much for taking that on.
one more thing for the group, we've talked about emerald ash borer, the insect that is kind of decimating ash trees. And I kind of prefer not to take that risk and plant a lot more ash trees, especially along our streets. We do have some around that we've looked at and we'll keep an eye on. But I think ash is kind of one we might we should probably at this point take it off the list. We have other substitutes if we want that same shape and form.
We also, staff has identified, I think, 3 trees in Sankey Park that
Yes,
probably need to come down and
Yes.
then we would need to replant those.
yes.
So that's probably a plan that we should
Yep.
talk about, so.
We looked at those at Arbor Day.
Yeah,
They're
they're-
definitely bad.
Yeah.
they're dying quick.
Fir trees?
Yeah.
Big
Well,
ones.
we'll look
Yeah.
into getting a cost without getting those down without damaging anything. And they're big, if a couple of them are big, right? If
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yep.
They do have some pretty nice straight boles, so they might be some great lumber, if you recover that for benches, projects, whatever you have. So,
I've noticed several Doug firs all of a sudden turn brown within the past couple months.
yeah. Drought. I mean, even though we kind of came out of it short term, this is like the long term culmination. Although our Douglas fir out here looks pretty healthy still. So, okay. Happy to do this for you, Angela. Back on track.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate you taking that on. I kind of forget about the street tree until somebody asked me about it. Went, oh yeah, I need to bring this up. We need to look at it.
Okay, so moving on to some things, since we're on to the next thing, a roundtable, some things that we have going on that we need to plan out. The Jim Beam Safety Fair is June 21st. I've been in communication with somebody in the police department. It's in my emails at home. Female, she's running it. And so we're in. We have our own booth site. She's got us all placed and set up. So please put that on your calendar. That has been a success every year with us going there and pushing kids to get into the park and have some fun. And the only thing that we haven't had directly was an activity at our station. So if you guys can start noodling on that, like a some kind of an event that would relate to a park or a tree. And you know, the kids could do when they come there. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but usually activities draw more, and the more people that come around, I've been amazed that how many people, like Nancy was saying, the brochures and knowing how many parks are there. When we hand those out, people are amazed, like, oh, I didn't realize we had all these parks. Like, yeah, I suppose if I wasn't on the park and tree, I may not know it as well, but
This year it's being held in Sankey. Did you see that?
I didn't.
Yeah.
It did last year also.
too.
Was it last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it
It
was
was.
such a success that they decided to keep
go
doing
back
it
to
there.
Sankey.
Yeah.
It's huge.
So that'll make it easier because I must have been gone last year during it. No, I was there. I remember it
It
now.
sprinkled a little bit like later in the day, but.
Yeah. It just took a little bit for it to come back.
Or by the sidewalk.
Yeah, now I remember it. And we still didn't have an event part of it. So,
So we
Let-
have a meeting before that.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Wednesday
right,
before,
yeah,
18th.
yep. So anyways, let's noodle on that, an activity, because that's something that people remember, kids will remember. It's important.
Want to get that tic-tac game again?
No, I'm thinking something like a park game,
Okay.
something they could do. And
Scavenger hunt.
Yeah,
could be,
that'd be cool.
yeah. I don't know anything about a scavenger, how they work, but I've never done one.
So just to give you, when I had the park and tree committee, when I had the watershed team, we did a scavenger hunt in Sankey Park, but it was to identify native plants. So
Oh.
you just had a list of, and they would just, you give them a baggie and they just have to take a little piece of it or like a leaf off of it to identify it and then bring it back to you. And then they get something when they brought it back. But they would have to go through it doesn't have to be trees. I was teaching my kids how to identify plants. So that's what we did. It was a plant ID thing.
Yeah.
But you can have them visit certain parts of the park. And so that's what we did, and it went over well. And I had hundreds of baggies of plants when I got done, but
Yeah.
but it helped with them with plant ID. So again, mine was for plant ID.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and it was for high school students that I did it with, but
They can
We
find,
could
do
do
the
that with
map.
trees.
they can find ivy.
Yeah, and pull it down. Yeah, I think the only scavenger hunt I ever do is when I go to that unnamed store that's a corporate giant. And there's one in Lebanon, and then I go to the one in Albany. And when I go to Albany, it's a scavenger hunt. The store is totally laid out different. But the item that they don't have is an F2 on both stores. I'll just say that. They only have it in Salem. So,
Chair Shreves, before we get too much further, Deborah has her hand up to speak. Deborah, do you have anything to say?
No, I just didn't know how to get my hand back down.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you for recognizing me.
So, if we do the scavenger hunt, we could make a map. And maybe you're good at making maps, aren't you? After we decide what to do. So are we going to talk about it at our next meeting?
yeah,
Or is that too late?
we've got time. We'll talk about it at our next meeting and then we'll go from there. So think about it, go by the park, look at it, and I'll send a reminder out before the next meeting that we need an update for this, and don't just assume we're doing a scavenger hunt. Think about it. I mean, that's a great idea. I like it,
I do too.
but,
Then we give them a little goodie bag at the end if they win or what?
yeah, Pine cones.
for
I have a whole yard.
fur coats.
Yeah.
I know we don't have any merry-go-rounds or teeter-totters in that park, but are there any safety issues that kids should be aware of that could be addressed?
At the park?
Yeah, like how to climb trees without falling out and breaking your neck.
I don't think we should encourage tree climbing.
That's kidding.
Unless we
Sorry,
have,
I'm-
unless
I'm-
we have the Arbor Day people there, or the Arbor,
Wally's kind of contagious. I was
they moved to
joking.
Florida, so. Yeah, it's a bummer
Water,
our trees-
water safety with the creek.
Usually just tell them to stand
Here's
up.
the thought.
Yeah.
Don't climb on the bridge.
Yeah, that's a good idea, though. Okay, so keep thinking about
Okay.
that, because we have that coming. In addition to that, we did it last year. And I think if we're actually gonna work on the bridge, it's probably a good idea to continue Bridge Day. We did Bridge Day last year. Remember, we had a conflict with some other group who owned the whole entire park to themselves. And then Angela convinced them they don't. I was looking at a possible Bridge Day of July 26th. I don't know what other events are going on July 26th. It's, a little later in the month. It's a week or so before the country thing that goes
Jamboree.
on, the music stuff.
Jamboree.
Jamboree, that's it.
Nobody has booked the park for the 26th so far. And the Jamboree doesn't start setting up until that next week. And if you want to do something on the 26th, I can just make sure to let them know that they can't. I mean, they're not supposed to start until at least that Monday before. I have to
Right.
go look at the dates, but you should be fine to do something on the 26th. And I'm the one that books them, and I
Yeah.
have nothing on my calendar right now for that day.
So as far as the committee goes, what are your thoughts on doing Bridge Day again? And I had a follow-on idea, is why I was asking about the 3 bridges.
Tell us.
Well,
We're not gonna vote until you tell us.
Can you remind us what we did last year? I'm,
At
No.
Bridge Day?
I forgot what we did. Did we have the representative come and
we did.
Yes.
Yeah,
Was that last year?
yep.
She was the
The
one
lady
that,
that donated the
Yeah.
representative, state representative,
Yeah.
Lee Young, or I don't know her
yeah.
May ye.
name. Yeah.
She
I'm
would be
sorry.
a good resource then for the
Yeah.
historical, maybe application.
They do.
Okay, so that's what we did last year. We had
Yeah.
a kind of a formal event.
Yeah,
Right.
we did.
Okay.
I think maybe a less formal event would probably go over well. I mean, not that that wasn't a bad thing. I just think more participation.
Yeah, I had a crazy idea that you won't like. So
Didn't we combine that though with maybe we didn't. So what happens when you get old? I put too many things together and can't remember.
yeah, I didn't remember Jim Beam in the park last year. So somebody told me we did, and then I remember the whole thing. So, well, my idea was, and I don't know how far it is, it's just an idea, was on Bridge Day, we do I'm just gonna say the word, a 5K run from the 3 bridges.
Oh.
And that's how you do Bridge Day. I know that's organizing it or getting it laid out is a public works disaster. Am I correct? Marking off the streets where people are going to run.
Real safety.
Yeah. Maybe keeping definitely away from Main Street, but linking back in through it. So that was just a thought that I had while I was driving here today. And I thought, well, that would bring people into the park and we could talk about the bridges and we'd cover the 3 bridges we had and that links it all together. And then you did the 5K was the whole thing. And then a simple walk from the Weddell Bridge to the bridge on the west end and back for people that just want to walk it. So
You should reference your running expert down there.
Yeah.
to see-
Scott, I'm ready for you to.
well,
talk.
that's what I'm putting out there. These were just ideas because I was thinking about how do I get people to come to the park to do this stuff without buying 144 hot dogs.
Well, and
Yeah,
from
well,
a person who has coordinated the runs that we have
I've
here.
organized
it's hard.
multiple runs. The run that I helped, even though somebody else put the run on for the new era last winter, February, I guess it was.
Still ahead.
I still helped organize it. The advantage of doing a run that's not city sponsored is that you don't have to necessarily have traffic control everywhere. Most, runners are used to running in traffic, so they are aware enough, most of them, to keep themselves safe. And that's the way we ran that one. We just basically told them where to go, and that was it. If you have to get the cops out there and get barricades put up, and which you don't necessarily have to do, but it gets a little complicated and expensive if you have to have staff time involved.
Probably also depends on the route, right?
Yeah, the route you described, if you ran up here and then ran back to Sankey, that could be about, I'd have to measure it out. It's probably a little bit over 5K, but if you go all the way to down to the Clover, if you go to Clover and then, yeah, I would definitely bring people up Long rather than up Main.
Yeah.
And so it's like there are some complications with. I like the idea, or I like the intent of the idea a lot.
Right.
It would definitely bring people in, especially people from out of town. But you'd be surprised how many people around here are runners.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm not a runner. I'm surprised. I'm like, who are these people?
And I'm just going to tell you, as far as the road goes, so I coordinated the Sweetheart Run until we quit having it. So it's not necessarily, we didn't shut down roads, but we did have to have like guards throughout to direct people.
Yeah.
So it's finding all that, making sure, and then Public Works, like we would have cones. So Public Works does have to kind of go around. And a year that I wasn't involved, some children got lost. And so we made the kids run within the school grounds lot because the kids took a different route and the corner judge pointed them the wrong way. So there's just some logistics that you have to think. I mean, not that I'm just telling you kind of what it,
Right.
to do the roundabout and then whether it's timed or not. So that's another thing. If it's not
Yeah.
timed, then it's not that big of a deal. Timing, you have to pay for the guy that comes in and has the chips, and we used to
Right.
be able to get a grant for that, and the Siletz tribe doesn't do grants for that anymore. So
The
one, sorry,
I was going to say the other thing to keep in mind is there's a interesting thing going on in Oregon right now with recreational immunity, and it's still kind of up in the air how that's going to fall. But if this was a park and tree event, which is a committee of the city, we would have to get approval from CIS, our insurance, and that could be a little challenging if the route is on a street that isn't closed off. We would have to look into that further, but it's probably not something we'd be able to put together in just a month to get that
Right.
kind of approval. Recreational immunity is a big topic right now. If you followed what happened in Newport, it's still kind of up in the air how that's going to land. There's a short-term, basically stay on recreational immunity, but I believe that expires either the end of this year or early next year.
Oh, so we're good. We're going to do it in July.
So back to
Yeah.
your,
Thanks for the answer.
Unlikely we could have that approval by then.
how about if I map a run and just see how far it is, and then I can communicate privately with you.
Okay.
And then the other thing too is that, you don't have to do it officially
Yeah.
necessarily, or at least you don't have to have a timer. You don't have to have the plastic thing that everybody runs across at the end to get, everybody who ran in that race in February, and it was a little choppy. There were a few things that fell through the cracks, the kinds of things you described earlier. People who didn't show up on time and that kind of thing, to lay the route out and everything.
Right.
But they still had a good time and nobody complained. And there were people got some awards at the end. So it's pretty
Great.
clear who the top three were.
Yeah, and I think too, to also throw in on this, if there is potential road closures as an event, whether it's a city event, or it would have to go to council for those approvals.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I wasn't thinking of completely
Yeah.
closing a road,
yeah, it
just,
was,
somebody, this was the way you go.
I was being a little hyperbolic when I said road closures,
Oh.
but
We
Yeah.
I
usually
mean,
that's
just
where
road
public
or,
works comes
or
in.
just
Yeah.
control or just putting out cones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the Sweetheart Run. We had it was 5 and 10, if I remember right. And we didn't close roads. We just had the cones to kind of and then I made these little signs with arrows at one point, so to point people in the direction, and then have where the 10 and the 5 broke up because the 10 went straight and the 5 turned. We just made sure we had corner guards. So it's just thinking about, and I'm not saying this is not a good idea. We just have to think about volunteers, who,
Yep.
just to have some safety
Right.
precautions of it. So
Yeah, I already have a good list of volunteers that it came to my mind right away that I use and abuse constantly. I have set up,
I think I know some of them.
yeah, I have set up a thing called the Hash House Harry's runs. And I've done it overseas and even here with kids. And those are much more challenging because they were done with kids out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And for those of you that haven't ever been on one of those, when you come to an intersection, the intersection is not marked. And you have to go down the pathways maybe 100 to 250 yards before you find a go or no go signal. And everybody takes off and whoever comes back first wins. And those that don't come back, you go find them. So we never lost a kid more than a day. So no, it was, those are fun, but I've set several of those up and we just did them the day before. So that's just the background. That's where my stupidity thought was with Bridge Day, going through the 3 bridges we had. It's like, it can't be that hard. I didn't lose anyone doing all these other runs. So marking it out and kind of go from there. So noodle on that. And then maybe it is that we don't make it we make it an event that happens on the same day that the Bridge Day is happening. But
it's not city sponsored.
yeah,
That could be done. I mean,
yeah. And I
in
think
some ways.
I could get Mr. Bauer to help along with things.
There's plenty of people around who'd be happy to help out with that, I think.
Yeah. See any?
I mean, we're gonna have a whole bunch of kids. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm being optimistic in saying that I'm hoping to have a lot of kids running this summer, throughout the summer, trying to
Right.
get ready for cross country. So they would obviously be interested in participating, if not helping, so.
Yeah.
Are you talking separate than a Bridge Day run for the, For us.
It would go on that morning and probably start at the bridge, but it would just be, it's called its own thing
A separate event.
with Bridge Day going on. We'd just be a combined event. One is not city function, the other is.
So you're back to hot dogs.
Yeah.
We made a big loop. We're back to hot dogs. I
Yeah.
think.
If you guys want to maybe just
Well-
map something out,
Yeah.
and then we can get together and take a look at it and see how it would work.
Let's see how far how far
Yeah.
the distance is.
Yeah. And I'm more than happy to take that to council and see what they think.
The only reason you have to take it to council is if we have to shut roads down.
Yeah, I'd still take it
So-
there. Tell them about it and get them motivated.
I know Crawfordsville, they have a bridge day, but it's right at the bridge.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a community event of food and crafts and stuff right on the bridge.
That'd be a half marathon going out there.
Yeah. Quick question. What is our people limit on the bridge? Is it 50?
Currently, that's the recommended amount, yes.
I'm just gonna throw another idea out, not I mean, it could be a future thing, but how about a bridge hop?
See if we can get the bridge to flex.
No.
No.
Well, you'd
No.
only have 50. I'm thinking make it a 50s style hop,
Oh,
sock hop.
okay.
You could bring, I mean, we have a sound system.
We have a sound system.
You definitely have a large plaza.
And you have a plaza right
And
up
we have
front
a
of it.
plaza that could be part of it, but,
You'd probably want to do it in the morning or in the evening though, when it's not 90 degrees.
Yeah.
yeah,
Be kind of
But,
cool
you
to have
know.
music there.
maybe not for Bridge Day this year, but another kind of a themed event. But yeah, Bridge Sock Hop. Have a dance contest for adults and one for kids.
Probably not a bad idea. There's something I've never put together.
I'm looking at Nancy because I think
I like that stuff.
she could probably figure that
A
out.
little music, a little dance.
Oh yeah. Little retro. Anyway,
We're an event committee. We're not the Parks and Tree.
Yeah, but those are the kinds of things that
I know.
but you
you
do
know, promote the parks and also bring people to
yeah,
town.
do it in the park and you know, if you want to show off the bridge, what better way than, you know, bring in a few really cool dancers on the bridge.
Bridge Day, you could have school will be out then, but kids
Okay.
could draw pictures and you could all
Little
do all
car
kinds
show.
of stuff.
The
Anyway,
50s. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I like that idea as well. I'm not a slave to dancing, but
You could be.
I've been taken off the floor. I've danced 2 dances with my wife. One in Korea, halfway through the song, she walked me off the floor. And the one we had to do when we got married. And I think we made it to the end of that.
And you're still married.
Yeah. And other than that, they all happen in the shower where nobody can see them. So,
Okay, that's TMI.
Moving right along.
We're gonna say we're being recorded, Wally.
yep.
No,
Hey.
okay.
That takes us up to the, for events, that takes us up to Harvest Festival. And we'll learn more about that later on in the year. I think.
Yes.
Are we still on roundtable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Leah, you had your hand up first.
I was going to throw in one more event that we normally do because Nancy's with me, and that's Health Fair in August.
Right.
So that gives us kind of like we had our April event. We'll have a June with the safety fair, July with a Bridge Day, August safety fair, and then we end our season with Harvest
When
Fair.
is it?
16th,
Okay.
August 16th.
Thank you.
Health Fair.
Saturday.
Okay.
Can you still sign us up or you
So
were doing that?
This week is app week. I'm sending.
Okay, fantastic.
I could
August
just fill it out
If
for
you,
this part.
should we
Yes.
vote on that or is that just a we do it because
We
we've
do
been
it.
doing
I
it?
think that follows in with Arbor Day and everything else we normally do.
And to kind of whip back to Harvest Festival, I will be opening up vendor applications the end of this month, 1st of June here soon. I'm putting it all
Great.
together. So I've already received sponsorships, so things are already moving. But as it gets a little bit closer, then we can start talking about the pie bake-off. We're not doing the chili cook-off this year, so the pie bake-off will be the only competition. And last year we had a lot of pies, so
Yeah.
we can talk about how to work that as it gets closer to the event. But just to give you, you'll start seeing ads go out, and you'll start seeing. First up though is Movies in the Park, so I'm trying to get all that out first.
What's the date?
Or
October what?
whatever the first Saturday is, 4th, I think. I think it's October 4th.
I just want to put it in my calendar at the
Yeah,
house.
October 4th.
Okay.
And the health fair is August
August
16th. That's also the day of the rodeo. Although the rodeo, I think, is probably an evening event,
Afternoon.
afternoon.
Probably afternoon, because
Yeah.
ours is 9 to 2, so.
Okay.
And we usually capture most of the people
By noon.
between 9 and noon.
Okay.
You know, it starts slacking off.
So as you can see, we still keep a pretty solid
Yeah.
movement of activities and linking with the community. So,
And
think
just so
that-
you're aware, and when I talk about your powers and duties, the stuff that you do in the community also goes toward our Tree City USA because it's it's considered community education and community outreach.
Yep.
So that still is part of what you should be doing. I don't want to discourage that. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we don't forget that there's other things in
Oh,
here.
yeah.
So, because I think the events and the way you engage with the community is great. I just want to make sure that we loop back
Yep.
to these duties also.
okay, Nancy?
Oh, I just had, So Tyson goes down to Ashbrook Park about every day. Unfortunately, he's inherited a little bit of his grandma's personality. Anyway, but so there's graffiti on the slide and stuff. He says people have been putting phone numbers to call. And anyway, so he was going to take a picture of it so I could show you, but he didn't. So I just know that that's there. And there's a kid on the corner that throws rocks all the time, but they called the police. And anyway, Tyson's kind of being the watchman over at that park. But, you know, that's he and all of his friends go to that park a lot. So the other thing is I had a few people ask me in our neighborhood, so is there things that we can do at Holbrook Park to spruce it up?
Actually, that's on my list of my
Okay,
roundtable because I forgot to put it on here
Okay,
after.
good.
So we'll talk about Hobart here in just a minute.
because
so.
people have asked about that, and I knew before we had the endangered plants, so I wasn't sure everything that we could do there. Or,
Yeah, we can talk about once you guys get through whatever we can talk about
Okay.
Hobart.
The only other thing I wanted in another idea, so unfortunately, I would love to see someday, some year, that the city council and the parks board and any other committee people that could fit on a float or walk in the Sportsman's Holiday Parade. We could hand out our brochures and beautification committee. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of people after talking to that gentleman yelling obscenities at us going down the street. There's a lot of people, honest to God, that don't know what's going on. They either don't read the paper, sorry, Scott, but not everybody does, or they're not on Facebook. And there's just, they go, what's going on? I didn't know you did that. I didn't. And so personally, I think it would be a good idea. It doesn't have to be everybody, but did we ever think, I mean, I've thought about it before doing the parade.
I've had thoughts on the parade as well from
So,
time to time.
I think it would be a plus for us and you know, we could get Aaron on the parade with some city councils. So I did want to tell you that there was a real positive comment that went out, Greg, because Dylan went to see the plant yesterday. So that was positive. I think people like that. I know it's off our topic, so I'm sorry, but the council being more involved with everything. That's it.
Yeah, I've thought about the parade multiple times, and my truck has been in the parade, my trailer has been in the parade,
Yep.
but my truck and trailer together have not been in the parade, nor have I. So just it's come to my thought process of doing it. It's usually unfortunate for me. It's in a time that I'm never here.
Yeah.
Is the date for the parade, is that July 12th?
I'm not sure what the date is.
Just have to leave your trailer for
It's
us.
through the chamber that
It's
does
the
that.
weekend after the 4th
Fourth.
usually, so
Okay.
it would be the 12th, yeah.
Sportsman's weekend.
I used to build floats.
12.
Yeah.
Company.
See, he used to build floats. See, we got a guy right here.
I did a lot of them.
Okay, let's talk about Hobart.
So I'm actually going to let Adam tell you most of it because he went out with us. So we had the surveyors from OSU come out to survey the limation that are out there. They do it every couple of years, and Adam actually went out with them. I could not go, so he went out with them, and we had a conversation not only about the plant, where the plant exists, but also kind of maintenance of it. And so that's part of where I would like to say, no, the community can't just go in there and do what they want to do. We are working with them, and Adam can tell you the information they gathered from that, but we also have a partnership with the fire department to start talking about fire break. And we have been talking, they are, I guess I feel kind of proud. One of the department liaisons for this project and the other ones we're working on actually was one of my former students. So I know he knows all about plant besides the fire science, so which is pretty cool. When he came and met, I was like, oh, I feel old, but I also feel proud at the same time. So that is something that we are working on. And like I said, Adam got great information from them and passed that back on. So if you want to tell them what you learned.
Yeah, so it was actually really cool. So I spent a couple days with the researchers and got to actually go out and do the lomatium count.
Can you tell me what that word was and what it means?
The lomatium?
Yeah, whatever that is.
That is the endangered plant.
It's called
Bradshaw's
Got it.
lomatium.
Okay.
It is a tiny little flower that you've probably seen and stepped right over. We have one of the largest remaining native populations of this. It has been delisted federally, which we at City Hall were super excited about because we thought that maybe that would open up some opportunities. However, it is still listed at the state level, which actually, because we live in this state, is almost harder to deal with than the federal listing. So there's still a lot of requirements on that site. There was good news and bad news. The good news is the lomatium is still there. The bad news is we haven't been taking care of that site like we should. And so it wasn't as prevalent as we were necessarily hoping to find. There is a very specific time of the year, the Bradshaw's lomatium. It's one of the few plants that's actually disturbance based. So it doesn't want to be left alone. In the old days, they would actually recommend prescribed burns because of that site's close proximity to all the forest right there. That may not necessarily be the best option. However, in the lowland swamps is where the Bradshaw's lomatium is most prevalent, and that would be the safest place for a burn. However, you can't do that any time of the year. And unfortunately, the time that we should be mowing it, which there's also a very prescribed height of mower deck that we don't have. However, the two ladies did get me some contacts for some state agencies that may be able to come in and more or less brush hog that. You guys touched on the ash borer beetle. There is some ash trees in there. Their recommendation would be to eliminate all of the ash trees in there and replant with native white oak and turn that back into a white oak savanna. Because we know as time goes on that ash borer beetle is going to be a problem. So if you get rid of its food source now, not a lot of the ash trees in there are super mature. They're really scrubby. But it was a cool experience. I got to go out and see this little weed that I had no idea even existed. I've probably seen it other places, and I've probably pulled it out as a weed at some point in my life. It looks like a tiny little wild carrot with a small yellow blossom. It's cool. It's not spread throughout the entire site. It is very much in small patches.
Well, like Adam emphasized, it may have gotten delisted federally, and even if it was delisted state, we are still one of the very few areas that has a population of them. So even if it got delisted, I would not recommend going in there and just building a whole bunch of stuff on top of it, because we don't want to be the people that, demolishes a population that's nowhere else in the state. So there has been some plans in place for a long time, and eventually, we'll talk to the appropriate people about doing, raised boardwalks and different things. And we've talked for years about making running trails back on the pack that's not the wet portion of it. So there are things that can be done, but it has to be done by professionals and at only certain times a year. So there is a lot of restrictions associated to it. So the reason why, it looks wild is because that's what it's supposed to stay wild.
Right.
And so, but there is concern, and we've had talks with Public Works, and we've been talking about just especially the areas near all the homes. And, we're having more conversations about what we can do and when we can do it, and, how to make this population better, but also make it safe for all the neighborhoods and whatnot.
That's
So
good, because it was people in our neighborhood that actually talked to me about it. So I thought that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I wonder how many of those plants were taken out, because I live there. How many of those plants were taken out when our houses were built?
Probably not a lot, because of its proximity to that drainage ditch that runs through there,
Yeah.
which didn't go through your neighborhood.
Mhm.
It prefers the wetter soil. So honestly, probably not a lot. And like I said, it's small patches. It's not evenly distributed through that whole site. There are a couple little colonies. It's very, very, very localized, which is why it is important that we do take care of it. And it's a very, very specific time frame for when we should and should not touch that. So having members of the community go out there with weed whackers and try to help us could be
Yeah.
absolutely detrimental.
Right.
So what was it, all that information in the parks plan? What you just described? It seemed
There's
to me I
actually- there's
read
a-
that whole
there's-
thing.
There's an actual Hobart plan.
Exactly.
There, yeah.
I read
Yeah.
that.
Hobart
It
has
included
a
everything you
plan.
just talked about.
Yeah.
And it's still very valid, the plan that was put together in the very beginning when
Yeah.
it all came
Yeah,
about.
it's very
And
detailed.
Yeah, and also part of the Hobart, part of the agreement that when that land got turned over to the city is that it has to stay a natural area. It
Yeah.
has to stay, it can't be turned into
Right.
some big park thing, but we are allowed to possibly do like boardwalks and some benches and simple things in there to make it so people can go
I was
through.
gonna say, if you haven't read that, everyone
Yeah.
should read
And I can
that.
send you all a copy. It's,
I remember when Carol Lewis worked for the city that talking about that plant way back then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a topic of discussion for a long,
Because
long
that'll
time.
be a very detailed process, how you want to maintain that or develop it.
Correct.
A lot of criteria.
Yeah, we have to be very, very careful.
and we'll be working on procedures this year, just to, after we got the report from them saying what we should and shouldn't be doing, we're gonna grant it.
Because
Yes,
after,
there are houses surrounding it and there is the timber up above
Yeah.
it. So, we've got to,
Their recommendation to us was that we actually don't do anything,
Yeah.
that we let the experts come in
I know,
with their,
after I read that, the only thing I could think of was elevated walkways.
yeah.
Up and away from.
So
that's part of the plan. That's
Yeah.
actually in the plan.
there are state agencies that have the correct equipment and mower decks at the appropriate height
Yeah.
and the correct blades. So flail mower, for example, might be a bad idea, but there's a very specific way that this plant likes to be dealt with
Hmm.
that encourages spreading.
It's called goats.
Yeah. Goats would probably not be the right way.
They deserve-
And like I said, the preferred method would actually be a burn, a prescribed burn every couple years, but that has its own challenges. But like Angela said, we do have the fire district now that is training specifically in the fuels reduction area. So that may not necessarily be completely off limits either, especially because of the close proximity to that drainage. So it's already a really, really wet area. This time of year, there's no way you could get it to burn. But
Is that a
It all-
challenge?
Well, you can't
No,
this
Ollie.
time of year anyway, because they're blooming.
yeah, they're blooming. Now is not the right time.
Yeah, we all
that-
have sump pumps at our homes,
Yeah,
wetland.
and there's no definite plan Adam learned all this information.
Yeah.
And I am working with the fire department on a different piece of our land. They actually had Hobart on their list to talk to us about, so we ended up having that conversation at the same time. So there's a possibility that we have a way forward with Public Works and city and just different partnerships of being able to bring that back how it's supposed to be. So cool, and keep it the natural area that we're supposed to keep it. So yeah, we have a lot of land that has protected species and plants in it. So I don't think people realize that, but
Right.
the city itself has a lot of hurdles in our own properties. So
We're running out of time. I do have one question because I haven't heard anything on it in a while. Are there any updates for thought processes or anything going on with Corey Park? I know that's not the official name, but for those out there on the web.
that's actually that's one of the things we're doing is doing the working right now, possibly working with the fire department on doing some fire breaks out there. But I have to get a hold of Oregon Fish and Wildlife, Corps, all of the agencies, because Corey has every different scenario you can think of that is protected besides water, species, plants. There's an eagle's nest out there that they told me actually the eagle's in this year. So there's a lot of different stuff that and our people, we're all very limited to what we can do and how we can do it and when we can do it. So I'm trying to get all of the information for all of the regulatory agencies, not us, but everybody else, so I can get proper information to our department and to them to figure out how to make this all work. So it's
I
not
was-
the easiest thing to do, to get
Yeah.
them all together and get answers, but
You drove out there, a lot of big stones, so you can't go too many places, which is good. Yeah, off limits.
I was also made aware in dealing with Lomatium that we are probably going to see the western pond turtle listed,
Hmm.
which would mean another protected species on that property, which would be more restriction for what we can and can't do because their habitat is not just the water. So
Wow.
it may,
Oh, you
That's a
think
wildlife
that you think
sanctuary.
they would be in Hobart?
no,
no,
at
Quarry.
at Quarry.
Yeah,
Quarry.
definitely.
At Quarry.
with
Yeah,
the
they've
ponds
been
there.
spotted. So
Yeah.
if the pond turtle does end up getting listed, that's yet another hurdle
kayak.
at that property.
no, you can do stuff like that
yeah.
down
Oh, you
there.
can
It's,
do.
you know, motors can't be done, but it's the, I guess, restoration work or development down there. And the same thing in Hobart. You just have to be careful and there's procedures. It's not that you can't do things. There's
Yeah.
just going to have to be a certain way and certain steps to be able to do it, which, you know, even for us, it's frustrating, but, and it was a year or two ago that the Corps made me aware of the turtle. So
Wow.
I'm a turtle fan, but I still, but yeah, so there, we have challenges, but we're getting there.
Sure. Candy, I just wanted to make sure that you know that we have these events that are going on. And I invite the beautification committee to partake in those if you would like. And if you would just like us to hand out brochures for the beautification committee for volunteers, anything else that we can do to help the beautification committee during these events, we're all in with that also.
Ashley
Oh,
likes
oh.
participating. Hi, Ashley.
That would be nice. You know, I can't guarantee that I can be at all of them, but yeah, I'll let the committee know when we have our meeting and maybe
Yeah.
some of the people would be
Sure.
willing to volunteer.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there. I want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any last minute items for the roundtable or whatever it's called here at the end?
It is. Big
Nothing
meeting.
else? This concludes at exactly 10 o'clock,
Woo.
the Park and Tree Committee meeting. Thank you.
It's a long one.